So a couple items I wanted to touch on with both of you in prior hearings to your counterpart nominees. I've had a chance to ask questions generally about equity and using the budget together with policy to advance equity. We've touched on what it means in the COVID context, in the climate change and environmental justice context, in the context of housing and homelessness and others. So the question actually I wanted to prioritize for today is one that speaks more towards management and leadership. We know that after years of persistent attacks on federal employees and public employees more broadly during the last administration, we face significant challenges in the recruitment and retention of a talented federal workforce, and especially a diverse, talented federal workforce. The federal government seems to be falling behind in the hiring of the workforce for tomorrow. A year ago, only 7.3% of the federal workforce was under the age of 30, compared to 23% in the private sector. Add to that the recognition, both by number and percentage of federal employees, particularly at the senior levels, upper management and leadership, that are eligible to retire in the next decade. Right? It begs the question, are we prepared to do the proper succession planning to maintain that continuity of leadership throughout federal government, and couple with that the need to promote diversity. It seems to remain an obstacle across the federal workforce. People of color are overrepresented in entry-level positions, but severely underrepresented in senior level and career senior executive service positions. Federal agencies must take meaningful, proactive steps to recruit the workforce of the future while promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, question for both for you, Ms. Young, and for Mr. Miller: what can we do? What ideas and commitments can you commit to leverage the funding process to improve the recruitment of a young, diverse cohort of professionals? And also, what can we do to further strengthen the morale of our current workforce to help on the retention side of things?
Senator Padilla,
Mr. Miller.
Thank you for the question and commend you for focusing on this issue. Successful organizations require talented, diverse, highly engaged teams. The data shows that repeatedly. When we look at the federal government, as you noted at the end of your comments, the engagement levels, the morale levels are not where they should be. The opportunity to serve our country is a privilege, and the federal workforce is filled with dedicated, talented individuals, and we need to empower them to fully do their jobs. First, I think you noted this, but we do need to broaden the sources of recruitment into the federal government, including by inspiring more people to serve. This includes a focus on diversity and inclusion. It also includes a focus on technical talent. We need to look at any bottlenecks in the system to bring people in, and it's something that in my role, if confirmed as Deputy Director for Management, I would be willing to work with you and excited to work with you and members of this committee on, work closely with OPM, with the CHICO Council, the Chief Human Capital Officers Council across federal agencies, to make sure we're empowering, lifting up, engaging with, and skilling our federal workforce for our needs today and tomorrow.
Okay. Ms. Young?
I'd like to add I agree with everything Jason has stated. From my experience, I started the government as a presidential management fellow. I was lucky to find a brochure in a dean's office in New Orleans. Turns out, if you were on the East Coast in a school, you know all about this program, not so much from other parts of the country. I think we have to do a better job of where we recruit around the country. I think people will travel, they will serve their country, they just don't know a lot of opportunities exist. I think we can go to community colleges. We need to expand where we go look for talent and do a better job. And we certainly need to do it in these areas we are having trouble recruiting in the technology place. Not everything is about money, and I think people are motivated to serve their government, but we certainly can't create hurdles And we've heard, I've experienced it where you go look for a job on USA Jobs, and it's not the easiest to do. So I think we need to, as Jason said, remove hurdles from serving in addition to improving our recruitment processes.
Thank you both for that. With the less than 2 minutes I have left, wanted to tee up another question, allow for you, both of you to respond to a dynamic that was raised earlier in the hearing, and that is the wisdom or strategy behind supporting states at this time when some seem to be hurting more than others by the COVID-19 pandemic from an economic impact standpoint, and some states experiencing what, in my view, is a false surplus. I can speak to California, my home state, but I imagine others that made significant mid-year cuts in the 2019-2020 fiscal year at the outset of the pandemic and adopting 2020-2021 fiscal year budgets that were frankly doomsday budgets, not knowing the depths of the recession. Some states have been buoyed by incredible performance in the stock market, right? Wall Street record highs, Dow Jones record highs, while at the same time I see record lines at food banks and COVID testing sites. So can you just speak to some of the dynamics that you would take into consideration as we act on the wisdom of supporting states at this difficult time?
Thank you, Senator. You're absolutely right. There are some states who saw this coming, took some drastic steps, but we certainly cannot use those baselines. There has to be an explanation why there are certain people being overly left behind in this pandemic, and state budgets. They have to balance. I appreciate the difficulties where the federal government, I think, can serve a role here, is to ensure that basic state functions can be brought up, and there are some populations that require more services during the pandemic, or we're going to have more of a wealth gap in this country. So more investments are needed. I look at the homeless, the needs of the homeless. I don't think anyone can argue that we were doing too much or enough to fix the homeless situation. Maybe we should use the COVID pandemic to do better. And we saw that population was at more risk. We didn't have a great handle before the pandemic. So there's some areas, especially with communities who were already behind in the pandemic. We need to ensure that state services not only stay the same, but we do better.
So thank you, Ms. Young. Mr. Miller, I see you eager to jump in. In the interest of time, let me just say that it'll be an ongoing conversation. In closing, let me just acknowledge that some of the cuts, drastic actions taken by states included deep cuts to the social safety net, number one, but also to state employees, both staffing levels as well as wages and salaries. So that's not lost on me, and to the extent that we can help restore those baseline of services, I think that would serve us well.